Welcome back, everyone. Mr. Talbott here for you again. We're going to jump into topic 2.1, which is on the Silk Roads. During our first unit, we kind of looked at all the things that were going on around the world and how people there were developing. The second unit's all about kind of the connections that are being made. So we want to look at the causes and effects of these networks of exchange after 1200 and kind of leading up to 1200 as well. And the first one we're going to focus on is going to be the Silk Roads. So what you might do as you're taking notes on this video is you might want to pause the video, kind of identify some of these key terms, things that you might want to be keeping an eye out as you lay out outline notes or whatever your note-taking style is. Definitely going to be focusing on innovations in transportation and in commerce. We're definitely going to be looking at some of the goods that are being exchanged across the Silk Roads. So when we see the Silk Roads, it's going to be kind of the first example of what we today call globalization. These people over different areas trading for different goods that they would otherwise never be able to get because they're not native to where people are from. And so we're going to see that we're shipping these goods all over, Eurasia and Afro-Eurasia. And along with that trade, we've talked about with Dar el-Islam already and some of the others, that trade helps spread religion, language, technology, other pieces of culture. In addition, we want to think about how it's going to affect governments. So before all this trade could take off, one of the factors we're going to see we need was actually going to be really strong governments. So sometimes today we think of governments can sometimes maybe limit or be too involved in trade. Well, you need good, strong governments to make trade possible in the first place. So we're going to see as more trade takes place, because the governments are strong, are able to secure it. Governments in some places are going to be more involved, have more economic controls. In other places, they're going to be less involved. But we're definitely going to see that as these regions become wealthier and the governments become wealthier, there's going to be more fights over who should control it. Should the governments who are running these taxes be controlling it, or should these merchants be able to have more and more influence? So kind of on this slide, we're looking at kind of the necessary factors to increase trade. Well, the first two is that basic economic idea of supply and demand. So in order to have trade, you have to have people that want it. And you have to have stuff that people want. So we kind of look up here in the top left, you'll see kind of all the different stuff that is kind of being provided by these different regions along the Silk Road. So obviously out of China, it's going to be silk is one of the main ones. That's why it's called. But also we know China invented gunpowder and paper, and those are going to be things that are going to be spread as people in the rest of the world are becoming more literate. From places like Central Asia, we're going to see livestock and horses are going to be really important, different animal hides. India's got cotton, medicines, spices that'll be very important. The Middle East, a lot of these foodstuffs. And again, these are all being traded over this whole region. And so we're also seeing an increase in demand. People are traveling more because it's now safer to travel. Some of the technology to travel is getting better. Things like the compass have been invented, for example. We've got people that are writing about it like Marco Polo and Ibn Battuta, who we'll talk about in a future video. And we're also seeing more connection from earlier trade, from things like the Crusades and other military campaigns we see with Dar el-Islam trading. So there's more connections happening. And as people get more connected, they are introduced to new goods. They're reading about new goods. They want new goods. So we're seeing an increase in demand. So that's people wanting and having stuff that people want. Now we need to think about, if we're going to have this trade, what has to happen? So we're going to need to have security. It needs to be safe for the merchants. There's no planes. You're not flying the stuff anywhere. It's all being taken, and it's pretty exposed to, bandits and raiders and that kind of thing. So we really want to make sure that we have states that can kind of keep that trade relatively safe, by 13th century standards. And then we're also going to see some big innovations in commerce, things like paper currency and credit, banking houses. All those things, you need a government who's going to help regulate those things and to make it things that people are going to be willing to trust. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So those are the four things that we need to have to increase trade: supply and demand, security, and commercial innovations. So kind of looking at what's going on in the world leading up to this point, we're going to kind of start looking at Asia. We know China is the most kind of well-developed part of the world technologically at this point. And there's other civilizations like the Vishnagara in South Asia. We talked kind of about what's going on in the Middle East with some of the caliphates. So they're going to be kind of the more sedentary, those civilizations based around farming, so stay in one place, build lots of things, develop these bigger governments and bureaucracies, especially in China, and that spreads to other parts of East Asia. So that's kind of the outer rim of Asia. Then in Central Asia, it's a lot drier here. So farming is not really as productive. So these people are more based on kind of herding animals, and so they travel around more. We call them nomads. And these people are going to develop their own technologies around horses, things like the stirrup that is going to spread. We'll talk about that more with the Mongols. But basically, you've got Central Asia and the outer portions of Asia are kind of mutually dependent upon each other for things that they want. So sometimes they get these things by just trading and exchanging goods, bartering. Other times it's more we're going to see, particularly with out of Central Asia, people going kind of raiding from those agricultural deals, because it's harder to raid a nomadic people because you don't know where to find them because they're moving. So down here we kind of see some of the things that they need. China's going to need horses for their military. Mongols need agricultural products so they can feed themselves, and manufactured goods so they can have some of this horse technology. And then we've already said things that are kind of going out of Central Asia. So that's kind of the early things that are going on. The other big one, and we talked about this before, was strong centralized states. So we know in Europe there's been the Roman and Byzantine empires. We know China under the dynasties like the Tang and the Song are kind of developing bigger and bigger bureaucracies. If you remember your meritocracy, where you have lots of different people working for the government in China. So, and then we know you have the Abbasid and the different caliphates across Dar al-Islam. So if we think about where the Silk Road runs, so this is the red stuff here, you're going to see it basically goes along, from the Chinese to some of these Indian, we're going to see kind of the golden age of India, and then some of the sultanates and caliphates across here to the Roman and Byzantine empires. Strong centralized states that can control the area are all along pretty much the whole trade network. That makes it possible for somebody to travel it and to carry goods without having to worry about being raided. So having these states in place are going to make it safe to trade, and it's also going to make it economically safe to do some of these commercial innovations like paper money, like credit and banking houses. And those are some of the things we're going to hit on in our next video. So make sure you're kind of finishing up your notes. Don't forget to do a summary of your notes, and then once you're done with that, take a little bit of time, organize it, and then we'll be ready for the next video.